Xtalks is the industry leader in connecting life science, food, healthcare, and medical device professionals. The Xtalks Life Science Podcast features insightful conversations with industry experts about all things pharma, biotech, and more.
Hello and welcome to the Xtalks Life Science Podcast. I'm Ayesha Rashid, Senior Life Science Journalist at xtalks.com, and this week I am so happy to truly have a very special guest on the show. We always have special guests, but today I'm super excited to be joined by Dr. Pol Boudes, who is the Chief Medical Officer at Rectify Pharma, a biotechnology company pioneering a unique pharmacological positive functional modulators platform to address the root causes of genetic and protein folding diseases in the liver, cardio-renal-metabolic system and spaces, and also neurodegenerative disease spaces as well. So the company's lead program is in the hepatobiliary space. So we'll be definitely learning a lot more about that. Dr. Boudes has more than 30 years of R&D, clinical, medical affairs, and biotech leadership experience. He is a board-certified physician in endocrinology and metabolic diseases with specialization in internal medicine and geriatric diseases. Before joining Rectify, Dr. Boudes served as Chief Medical Officer at companies and biotechs like Galectin Therapeutics, CymaBay Therapeutics, leading pipeline programs and supporting multiple financings. At Amicus Therapeutics, Dr. Boudes pioneered chaperone therapies for lysosomal storage disorders. Earlier in his career, he held senior international positions at companies like Bayer, Wyeth, which is now Pfizer, and Roche. Currently, he serves on the board of Protalix Biotherapeutics as well. Dr. Boudes received his MD from the University of Marseille, France. So to learn more about Rectify Pharma's platform, its hepatobiliary pipeline, and how the company is working to advance therapies in an area that has long been underserved, let's turn to Dr. Boudes now. Thank you so much for being on the show with us today.
Thank you very much. It's great to be with you today, and thanks for the introduction.
Thank you. And the pleasure is ours. Dr. Boudes, as you know, you've had a very illustrious career spanning over 3 decades. And could you share your journey with us in the pharmaceutical and biotech industry? And I know, just doing this in a half-hour podcast won't do justice to it, but we'd definitely love to learn more about how you got into the space, in entrepreneurship, pharma biotech leadership, and what led you to join Rectify today?
So I'll try to make it short because it's been a long journey. So I would say a typical physician. I was practicing medicine, but what I was doing a long time ago was to take care of patients with HIV infection and AIDS. And it was a very, very difficult experience because there was not a lot of things to do. But I was also doing clinical trials and trying to find new drugs as an investigator for patients. And this led me to the pharma industry because I wanted to do more than just, look at people dying. It was a very, very difficult experience, and I was extremely lucky to start my career at Hoffmann-La Roche. And I was part of the team that discovered protease inhibitors that were drugs that completely changed the life of patients with HIV infection. So it was a fantastic experience, and I just wanted to continue to do this kind of things. So I was in Europe at that time, and very quickly I realized coming to this beautiful country in the US that a lot of innovations was here, and that's why I was able to come run a lot of program in Europe, and then was able to come to the US through one of the company I was with, which was Wyeth, that got acquired by Pfizer. And then, after some time, I've done a lot of different things, but I thought that one of the how can I say, ideal job for me was to be a chief medical officer in in a biotech company, a small biotech company. I prefer a small environment, which I think is much more conductive of innovation than big environments. So, and I was again lucky. So I started with this company called Amicus that is still doing very well, and where we discovered new treatment for rare lysosomal storage disorder, and then continue on that path with CymaBay, where we discovered a drug for a rare disease of the liver called primary biliary cholangitis, and then Galectin therapeutic, and now with my current company, which is really very, very innovative, actually, which is potentially having multiple application for rare and severe disease that have no treatments. So
Thank you so
I
much.
try to be brief.
No, I mean, that was fantastic because, like I said, to encompass everything again in a short amount of time doesn't do justice to it. But I think what really comes out and came out is your motivation for what you do and what you continue to do until today. So that's so wonderful to hear. Again, what drives you to do what you do every day. So, and in terms of Rectify Pharma, what can you tell us about the company's mission and goals, and what drew you to the company to as a chief medical officer?
So Rectify as it's called, if you want, a platform company. So we have a technology that is very interesting, and we can apply to different diseases. So basically, what we are doing, and the science is really beautiful. Uh, every cells in your body have on the surface structure that are called transporters. And what these transporters do, they bring things from the cells outside of the cells, or the other way, in outside of the cells into the cells. And these transporters are important because when there is a dysfunction, that can lead to diseases. And traditionally, transporters have been a little bit more difficult to address than, for example, receptors that you have on cells. But there has been a very interesting experience of a successful transporter story, which was applied to a genetic disease called cystic fibrosis, which was a terrible disease for kids. And this technology was really able to transform the prognosis of this disease and the life of these kids. So one of the founder of the company was actually very active in this field. And what we are trying to do is to expand this success to other diseases and other transporters. And it's really interesting because we can not only address transporters that are deficient because of genetic disease, but what we discovered also is that we can boost transporters that are, if you want, normal, but a little bit sluggish. So that's really interesting because we can expand the technology to other non-genetic disease. And that's what we are doing with our lead program in a rare liver disease that is called primary sclerosing cholangitis. So beautiful science and multiple applications. And what is really interesting is that we can, how can I say, improve structure that were very difficult to tackle before. So we have new avenues with new mechanism of action, which hopefully can transform some disease that have no treatment.
Indeed. And speaking of some of those diseases that lack treatments, Rectify is working in the hepatobiliary disorders space as a key area of focus. And so, what do you see as the greatest, as we say, unmet needs in this space? What kinds of conditions, indications are you working in with those high unmet needs? And the need for innovation in this particular space as well.
So there is one disease in hepatology that is called the black box of hepatology, which has been very, very difficult to tackle, and there is no treatment available. It's a rare disease, and it's a disease of the bile duct. Um, and it's really a terrible disease because not only there is no treatment, but uh, patients who have this disease also have a very high risk of what is called cholangiocarcinoma, which are the cancer of the bile duct. So basically, in this disease, you have a chronic inflammation of the bile duct that leads to consequence on the liver. Because it creates what is called stasis of the bile, which is cholestasis, but also a massive increased risk of cholangiocarcinoma. So when you get to diagnosis like that, what you hear is that, well, there is no treatment and you have an increased risk of cancer, which is very high. And the only chance for you is to get a liver transplantation at some point in time. So, what is really fascinating with Rectify is that we can improve the function of two transporters. And we have a drug that is called a dual modulator. And we are dealing with a transporter that is improving the composition of the bile, because in these patients, the bile is toxic, which is the reason why they have an inflammation of the bile duct. And then we are also boosting, if you want, another transporter that can um, deal with cholestasis. So, bile is a flow. And in this disease, there is an interruption of the flow, and we can improve this flow, which is really interesting because then you decrease the consequence of the cholestasis on the liver, parenchyma, but also you decrease the time of contact between a toxic bile and the bile duct. So it's really, when you think about it, and that's one of the reasons why I was so attracted to my current job. It's an ideal mechanism for a disease that has no treatment, which is a very severe disease, a rare disease, but a very severe disease. So potentially we could have a really very transformative treatment for this disease.
And in terms of, you did touch on Rectify's proprietary platform. Could you tell us a bit more about that and how the company is leveraging it to address rare diseases like the one that you just mentioned, the
Yeah,
bile rare diseases?
yeah. So, I
Without
can
giving
make
away
it
too many
very
secrets, don't
no,
worry.
I can I can make it very complicated, but I'll try to simplify. So we started with the family of transporter, which is called the ABC family. And there are multiple transporter of these families. For example, the two transporter we are targeting in this liver disease are ABCB4 and ABCB11. But when you look at, you build the technology and you know how to improve this transporter. So then it's a little bit easier to look at the transporter, which is part of the family, and you say, oh, I tweak the molecule and I can also deal with this one. So a big part of what we had to do was to see where we can apply this technology in the ABC family. And we have applications actually that are really interesting for rare um, CNS disease, which is called adrenoleukodystrophy, which is also a very bad disease. We have also a dual transporter for this disease, which is very exciting. Then we can also apply this disease for another type of ABC transporter. This time it's called C6, which is a transporter which is linked with calcification. And we can address a frustrating problem in medicine, which is ectopic calcification. And this ectopic calcification have implication for renal disease, but also for cardiovascular disease. So we have some really interesting data where we can apply that to this type of disease. And so you see, it's really interesting because we have the ABC transporters, but what we realize is that this technology we can apply to all the type of transporters on the cell surface, which are not part of the ABC family, which was one of the big, eureka moment when we were working on this platform. And one of the transporters that we are targeting are linked with a rare renal disease, which is called ADPKD, which is autosomic dominant polycystic renal disease, which is also a disease where there is a treatment, but it's less than ideal. So it's also very interesting because we have two transporters here, which are called that we can modify, which are called PC1 and PC2, which are polycystins, which are involved in this genetic disease. So in that case, it's a genetic disease that we can try to tackle. In the case of ABCC6, it can be genetic disease, and they are a rare disease where this transporter is dysfunctional, but we can apply it to more general situation like renal insufficiency, for example, which is also a frustrating problem because, life under dialysis is not the best of the life. So if we can try to prevent that, that would be also something fantastic. So as you can see, we can apply the technology to different fields, which is interesting, very exciting.
I just wanted to also ask you a bit about Rectify's pipeline. You don't have to go into too many details, again, proprietary information, of course, but what are some of the candidates that you're most excited about? What stage of development are they in? And just a broad overview.
Yeah, so lead program is this program for hepatobiliary disease. Again, it's an interesting program because we have the main indication we are going after to start with is primary biliary cholangitis, and we are working to be in the clinic next year. The step that we are taking is the IND, investigational new drug. So we are preparing everything for our compound to be in the clinic next year. It's an oral drug, which is also interesting. And this it's a dual agonist, and because of this duality, we can also apply the drug to different disease. So it works on the genetic side of things because there are people who have a dysfunction of this ABCB4 transporter. There are mutations, and there is a disease that is called PFIC, actually PFIC3, which is cholestasis of infancy. And then we can apply that because of this function on this other transporter, which is ABCB11, which is also called BSEP. So the nomenclature is a little bit frustrating, but BSEP means the BS is actually bile salt. So it's a bile salt efflux pump, and on the principle that can be something that could work for multiple cholestatic diseases of the liver. So we'll start with PSC, primary sclerosing cholangitis, and then potentially we can expand when we have the proof of concept and the proof of mechanism for PSC. So that's the most advanced program. Then we have this other program. So I mentioned that are what we call that the level of nominating a candidate, so candidate nominations. And we have this program for this rare disease, so adrenoleukodystrophy. We have this program for ABCC6. This ABCC6 program, when you think about the application, probably the most interesting application is to go to not genetic disease, but to broad indication like renal insufficiency. And then the renal indication for ADPKD is really interesting because that's a disease that is still a little bit mysterious in terms of mechanism of why people are developing this cyst in their kidney. And here, it's the same stage. We are at the DC nomination. Then potentially we can have other program, but I think I can stop here because it goes to show that we are very busy, actually.
Indeed. And you spoke about the importance of partnerships, especially in a field like pharma, biotech. And so what do those partnerships and collaborations look like, whether between other companies, smaller biotechs, mid-sized or large pharma, academia. So what are the types of partnerships that Rectify is exploring?
So academia, not so much, because all guys, some of them come from academia and want to go to the next step. So, and we have a platform that is very mature now. So now it's more turning to partnership, I would say clinical or really IND type of partnership. So, and you know how it is. So in this business, you have to talk to a lot of people so that people understand what you're doing. And then you have also to talk to a lot of people so that you can understand what people are doing and what is their interest. So if you take, for example, the pathology program, we can always partner the program at some point in time. There are not a zillion of companies that are involved in a pathology, but there are some companies that are really interested in what we are doing. So we have to make sure we talk to these companies. If you take the renal space, it's kind of interesting because it's more, if you go to indication like renal insufficiency, it's more the field of big pharma. And so we have to talk to big pharma that are interested in renal insufficiency. And the indication, which is the other one, which is more a rare disease like ADPKD, it's mixed interest, but it's a very hot um, area at the moment because there is not really a solution for patients. So you have to take that also into account. What are the field of interest at the moment so that you can find a partner that is really interested in what you're doing. And I would say that the last thing that is important to us is you don't want to talk to people and give your program, and then your program is going to be shelved. Because we, we just want to make sure that when there is a very interesting idea, a very exciting mechanism of action, and potentially you can do something for patients who have terrible disease, you want to make sure that your partner is in the same kind of mindset, so you can progress together. So uh, we're very busy because we are talking to a lot of people, but that's part of the job, and we try to be there, when there are congresses and stuff like that. So our platform is very innovative, so we're also publishing on it. We developed some models, for example, for this hepatic disease, primary sclerosing cholangitis. We have a model which I think is very interesting and unique, and it was invented by Rectify. So we published on that. We presented it at multiple congress. So, we're trying to make our story known. We're still a very small company, but we have also we were very well supported by well-known investment funds. So that gives you also give us some, how can I say, some good reputation in the field. So, we are not at our first rodeo if you look at all the senior management of the team and the good scientists that are working in this company.
Absolutely, and we here at Xtalks know Rectify for sure. We've had Rajesh on the show, Raj, and
Yeah,
we've learned a lot about the company, and definitely the science really comes through. And you definitely have a wonderful team led by a wonderful leader. I mean, it all starts at the top, right, as they say. So
absolutely.
that
And it's,
culture, and yeah.
I don't know if he will ever listen to that, but Raj is a fantastic boss. So that's also very, very important, that
Just the whole
you have.
leadership team, yeah, to have.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. Exactly.
absolutely.
Very experienced and very nice.
And you mentioned at the beginning when you were telling us about your journey in the fields that you really find yourself more at home. Can I say in smaller biotech? You've been with the bigger pharma companies, the Roches, the Pfizers, but what really attracts you about smaller biotech, and what are the advantages, I guess, and disadvantages of both?
It take all kinds to make a world.
Yeah,
So
that's
there are
true.
things that big pharma do very well. Uh, Very large, late stage program where you need to enroll 20,000 patients, and then you launch a drug, you market the drug. They do that very well. What we are doing is very, very different. We're much more early stage, much more on innovation. It's risk. We live with risk. If things are failing, so what? We're going to do something else. It's more my kind of you know of environment. And what I've learned, and starting with this, my first CMO job was with Amicus Therapeutics. You realize that there is basically no limit to the science and the what you can do with a good mechanism of action. So you have to understand the mechanism of disease. Sometimes, especially for rare disease, it's not very well known because they are rare. There are not a lot of people working on this kind of disease, but it's really amazing. And CymaBay was the same thing, and I hope that it will be the same with Rectify. What a small number of very dedicated people can do for patients. And I realize one thing which I really like also very much is that, I'm always saying to people working with me, don't forget that we are bringing hope. And if you take a disease like primary sclerosing cholangitis, it's very important that patients understand that there are people who are trying to solve the problem they have. So that's, I think, and when you're small, you're fast by definition, and so that's what I like.
And you spoke about really providing that hope for patients. And I think that, that as a driver is so powerful. And in terms of when we speak about patients, how does Rectify, for the company, really shape its strategy around patients? We talk about patient centricity and all of those concepts, but how does that translate into application when we talk about things like patient engagement, regulatory considerations, and then also working with patient communities through advocacy groups? And then from there and all the way to the regulator level when you're having those discussions, particularly in rare and complex diseases like the
Yeah,
ones you're working
I
in.
think over the past 20 years, I would say we have made a lot of progress in terms of banding together, I would say, because you need a lot of specialists to move the needle, but you need also the people who are affected by the disease to make sure everybody understand what their life is about. So if you take PSN, I think the model is well accepted now. It's accepted by regulators around the world, and it's also accepted, of course, by small company, but also by big companies that patients should be part of what you're doing. For primary sclerosing cholangitis, actually, there is a very well organized patient organization, which I think is one of the oldest patient organization in the US. Have been we had we were celebrating the 25th anniversary last year of the organization, and it's really a fantastic organization. Uh, because it's not only patients, getting together, learning about their disease, but they have so much experience that they know what it takes to move a drug from early development to late development and to registration. So they are involved not only in what patients organization do in terms of in uh, understanding the disease, helping each other, and things like that. But they are also part of the drug development process. So they do um, studies that are really helpful to better understand the disease, the natural history of the disease, and cohort analysis of patients that can be used hopefully in the future with regulators to serve as what we call, historical controls, which are really very important when you develop a drug for a rare disease. So it's a collaboration. They are very open, and we do as much as we can to help these people. It's really nice, and well, it was the same for the other disease I have been involved with, and I think for me, as a physician, I'm not, you know practicing anymore, but I need to see patients and discuss with them. And I think the forum, for example, that PSC Partners is giving is absolutely amazing because you need this. I think in a way, it's they tell you why you're working. And I'm always saying that to people working with me, you need to talk to patient because then I don't have to motivate you because you know what you're doing is very, very important. And even if we fail, at least we try. And I think it's very, very important. So, but there are other organizations, for even the rare neurological disease we are dealing with, and of course with the rare kidney disease also. But I think the PSC partner, and I can mention their name, it's really a fantastic organization. And I'm not the only one to say that.
Wonderful. And in terms of, you mentioned, of course, that Rectify is also working in different other indications as well, in addition to the hepatobiliary program being the central one. And so, how do you envision a platform like this, like the PFM based platform? How do you envision it, and in going forward in different indications? And what really do you think the potential could be for this?
Well, we have to build the company step by step. So the way we look at things, so first we're going to go in the clinic with this hepatobiliary program, and then we continue to build the story. If we are successful here, it's a clinical validation of the platform also, which is really important because then that opened the door for other program. At the same time, I think the science itself is very interesting, so we will try to partner the program that we cannot take everything ourselves. And I think the further we build the company, one expansion that is really very interesting is to go beyond the ABC family of transporter to go to other family of transporters, because the principle of transporters is a little bit the same, and we can address different sort of families. So there is basically a massive expansion of what we can do. So, at the end of the day, everything depends on the money you have also. So we have to make sure that we spend wisely, but we build the company and we can prove that the story is a valuable story to our customers. So step by step.
Indeed. And lastly, what are some of the things that you're most excited about in terms of upcoming milestones at Rectify? And then also in the space, in the hepatobiliary space in particular, in terms of greater understanding of the biology, different approaches, technologies. So I guess two parts to the question: what are you looking forward to in the next couple of years, both at Rectify and both in the field?
Well, I think the program for primary sclerosing cholangitis is extremely exciting because we are looking at this disease in a different way. And I think so. I've been in the hepatology field for nearly a little bit more than 10 years now, maybe even more. And when you think about what we can do with the mechanism of action, this is really at the core of the disease. So I have a lot of expectations for this disease because there is no treatment. And if we can change the course of the disease, something that for me is very exciting is that we can, when you think about the mechanism, we can decrease the incidence of cholangiocarcinoma. And this patient should not be at risk of having this cancer hanging over their head. So that would be a massive benefit for patients. The other things that, because we can address multiple indication, one thing that is very frustrating in hepatology is that liver transplantation can save life, but there is not enough liver to transplant patient, and it's an extremely expensive procedure. So we have to do much better in terms of preventing people to go to liver transplant. I think, for example, in the field, what's going on in the MASH field, is very exciting because you're going to have one drug, two drugs, three drugs available, and potentially that can have a very big impact on the epidemiology of liver cirrhosis, actually. So that would be really fantastic. And then, what is really exciting is to try to be in a situation where you can address a problem that is not addressable otherwise. That's why, for me, this CNS disease, adrenal leukodystrophy, is a very interesting disease because you can do transplantation, stem cells transplantation for this disease, but it's very, very difficult. You cannot always find, a transplant tissue. And there is a gene therapy for this, but there is a risk of cancer with the gene therapy. So you realize that, it's if you can address a topic like that, it's really fantastic. And as you know, CNS disease are really difficult to tackle because it's difficult to get the drug to the right place. But we have a program that, for me, is very exciting. So on and on, so I don't want to take too much time, but it's really a fascinating field. And then the last thing I would say, because sometimes you realize that working on the disease is very important because you better understand the disease. And if you take this renal disease, the cystic disease, AD, PKD, it's difficult at the moment to really understand why people are developing cyst in there. They have a mutation in a gene, but the mechanism of the cyst development is not very completely understood. And until you are there, it's kind of difficult to address the problem. So the scientific knowledge that you get on the disease, especially on a rare disease, when you work on this disease, is amazing, actually. Because that always lead to better things. So that's also very interesting in a way, because I can be a scientist, I can be a doctor, I can be a drug developer, and sometimes, I'm also a finance person.
Right.
So the job is very interesting.
Indeed, very multifaceted, all-encompassing, wearing different hats at different times. So I can see how that definitely keeps you on your feet at Rectify. And Dr. Boudes, thank you so much for your time today. Greatly appreciated. Learned so much from you about the field and about the amazing work that Rectify is leading in this space. And we wish you and your team all the best. And we'll definitely be in touch and keep our eye out for the upcoming milestones at Rectify and more.
Thank you so much. It was a great pleasure to have this exchange.
All right, that's the end of this episode of the Xtalks Life Science Podcast. If you liked today's show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.
To join the Xtalks community, visit xtalks.com and register for exclusive access to curated content like live webinars, news articles, and educational videos. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the speakers sharing them and should not be taken as professional advice, nor do they necessarily reflect the policy or position of Honeycomb Worldwide. For further information, email us at podcast@xtalks.com.